Is this seasonal exotic and its catalyst worth the grind? That's a question we have to ask ourselves every season. Now, the exotic itself is always an easy unlock, considering you simply just have to have the battle pass. Diris can be unlocked both on the premium and free track, although the free track does take longer. Now, last season, Centrifuge was actually looked at as being a weaker weapon inside of PvP, and on the surface, it would appear that way, until you got the exotic catalyst. Hence why Centrifuge became one of the most used weapons inside of Crucible last season in 6v6. With the right build and the right setup, that weapon was a monster. Today, guys, we're going to be taking a look at Diris, which is an ARC special ammo, quote-unquote, grenade launcher. It's a unique weapon in so many ways, but if you want to know the truth, guys, it's literally the Hive Knight's weapon. That's what it is. You can literally see it when you shoot its grenade. It's a replica of exactly what Knights also shoot at us. Now, before we go over its exotic perk, let's actually go over its unique magazine perk first. Nucleosynthesis Magazine. Now, this perk states that the magazine continuously draws ammo from reserves. The magazine also enables firing arc projectiles that detonate on impact. Essentially, guys, this is the perk that makes this weapon feel the way that it feels. It gives you those arc hive projectiles, and when you fire the weapon, you actually don't even need to reload. Its next round is automatically fed into its magazine, so you don't need to worry about reloading it at all. Now, following this perk, we have Diris' main exotic perk, Corrupted Nucleosynthesis. Now, this states that this weapon enrages when dealing or taking sustained damage, gaining increased rate of fire while in rage. And if you've been killed by Knights, you probably feel that. You're like, yo, what the hell? RPMs here just kicked way up. Now, this perk is pretty straightforward. As you shoot things, you'll see a bar next to your hipfire reticle start to fill up. Now, your rate of fire scales with the amount of this bar that fills up, and when it's completely full, you'll reach its maximum rate of fire. Now, you can also fill this bar up by taking damage, but it's not gradual like it is when you're dealing damage. When taking damage, the bar won't move until you've taken enough damage to proc the enrage. Now, once you've hit that, the bar suddenly fills up completely. That threshold to fill the enraged bar through taking damage seems to be when your shields break. So know that if you're using Diris and you get hit into the red, that means your weapon is going to be firing at its maximum speed. Now, keep in mind, you can also break your shields intentionally with Diris directly, as in you can just shoot yourself and this will enrage you immediately. You'll just need a way to just get your health back after doing so. Now, finally, its other signature exotic perk, Loyal Moths, states that final blows of this weapon creates a loyal moth. And the moth will seek out nearby targets and detonate, damaging and blinding them. Again, this perk is pretty straightforward. If you get a final blow, it essentially just creates a moth, similar to the ones that you find when fighting Lucent Hive. The moth will seek out nearby enemies and explode when reaching one, hitting for some decent damage, and as it states, also blinds them. It also perfectly synergizes with the new hunter exotic, Mothkeeper's Wraps, allowing you to spawn 2 moths. More on that later. Now, speaking of damage, how does Diris compare in damage to other grenade launchers in PvE? Here at Carl, one shot of Diris was hitting for an impact damage of 9,811 damage and explosion damage of 16,915. This is a total of 26,726 damage. Now, compare this to a regular special ammo grenade launcher with spike grenades and a spec mod, which hits for 13,324 impact damage and 32,563 explosion damage, for a total of 45,887 damage. Now, when you look at these two right next to each other, Diris hits for almost half the damage of a normal GL with spike grenades and a spec mod. Even wave frame grenade launchers, weapons meant primarily for clearing ads, will hit more than Diris. With a spec mod, Forbearance was hitting Carl for 31,401 damage. And for those who are curious, Wendigo with spike grenades and a spec mod was hitting for 17,185 impact damage and 42,624 explosion damage, for a total of 59,809 damage. Now, based on these numbers, one would assume that Diris isn't really a major chunking weapon. This is partially true, but keep in mind that you don't have to reload this weapon and it fires faster than other special nade launchers. Simultaneously, it gets stronger depending on how full your enrage meter is. Even then though, its damage still really isn't anything special against majors or bosses. Where it seems like Bungie wanted this weapon to shine was in its ad clearing potential. And in a way, that's where it seems to perform best. This weapon seems to live in a weird middle ground in between a single target damaging GL with spike grenades and an ad clearing GL like forbearance or other wayframes. The ability to spam AoE explosions combined with the Moth's extra explosion every few seconds makes it good at clearing groups of ads, but it doesn't do it as efficiently as forbearance. Its ability to build its enrage meter and then spam shots on a major enables it to take beefier enemies down decently well, but it's still not as efficient as other special weapons. Now don't get me wrong, it's a solid weapon with a fun playstyle, but it does feel like it doesn't truly excel at anything. But we can't deny the fact that this weapon truly is unique. Now stemming off of it being unique, Diris has a very interesting interaction with one of the new seasonal exotic gloves, the Mothkeeper's wraps for hunters. Now this interaction is very intentional and akin to that of Weapons of Sorrow and how they interact with necrotic grips on warlocks. For those who don't know, necrotic grips are exotic gloves for warlocks that spreads poison on melee kills. What makes them really cool is that if you use a Weapon of Sorrow with the poison damage, say for instance something like Thorn or Osteostriga, final blows from those weapons will then spread the same AoE poison from necrotic grips as well. Something similar here happens between Diris and Mothkeeper's wraps. The exotic trait on Mothkeepers is called Winged Eclipse, stating that your grenade becomes a cage of loyal moths that release on impact and fly toward the nearest target or ally. And if they reach a target, they detonate in a blinding explosion. And if they reach an ally, the moths then grant your ally a void overshield. Essentially, guys, your grenade will create two moths that are either the same kind of arc moth created by Diris, a void moth that grants an overshield, or one of each. Now, when using Diris, that grenade doesn't change. What does change, though, is that when getting a final blow using Diris, that will create an arc moth, which it does by default. But rocking it with Mothkeeper's wraps, you'll now also create a void moth. This moth will have the same functionality as the one from your Mothkeeper's grenades. It'll seek you or an ally out, and it will grant you an overshield. Now, this doesn't make the weapon super broken, and a lot of people were jumping up saying that that's a bug, but honestly, guys, this seems very intentional. Again, similar to Weapons of Sorrow and necrotic grips. And again, by no means is this busted, but it's a very consistent way to get that 50% damage resist through that void overshield with pretty much constant uptime for you and your teammates. Now finally, how much of a game changer is the exotic catalyst for Diris? Now first up, to attain it, just like all of our other seasonal exotics, you have to run the ritual playlist activities a number of times. Essentially, upon grabbing the exotic from the pass, you then head to Banshee. He will have a quest for you. The first step is just you killing a bunch of enemies in rapid succession without dying. But for the next step, you will have to get 450 final blows with Diris and then complete a ton of ritual and seasonal activities. Now, quick reminder, there is an upgrade on tier 11 and tier 22 of the season pass that doubles and quadruples your progress respectively. This will make this grind bearable. Not easier, just bearable. But also keep in mind, guys, this is a seasonal grind. This is not something you need to get done in a single play session. But I do highly recommend waiting into your rank 22 to then start grinding for this catalyst. Now, as for the catalyst itself, it comes with the perk Berserk Rush. This perk states that the weapon enrages faster while amplified, and final blows of this weapon make you amplified. Now, how fast are we able to actually max out our enrage meter? Now, without the exotic catalyst, it takes 5 shots to hit max enrage. With the catalyst, though, it only takes really 2 shots. But I do want to mention here that the faster enrage with the exotic catalyst does not affect the enrage you get by taking damage. As in, with the catalyst, your enrage meter still won't fill up until your shield actually breaks. Overall, guys, the faster enrage through dealing damage is a nice quality catalyst for this exotic. But the cool part of this catalyst is how you can get amplified on demand. It simply takes 1 final blow to proc it, and the amplified duration it gives you is 15 seconds. But the even cooler part of this catalyst is that you'll get this amplified status even if you're not on an arc subclass. Now granted, you'll get more synergy out of using Diris with an arc subclass, but if you wanted to play something like Strand or Void or whatever else, you could do so and still benefit from being amplified. Now there's been an open debate about amplify and its buff and moving things around. I think one of the biggest suggestions here lately is actually to take the 15% damage resist from Speed Booster and just give that to amplify by default. That would be amazing if Bungie takes that suggestion. But there's some benefits for being amplified, especially within our Arc 3.0 kit. You've got Spark of Beacons, which states while you're amplified, your Arc special weapon final blows create a blinding explosion. Now I know the moths already do that, but this is just tacking on the blinding explosion with with the weapon itself. You also have Spark of Amplitude, where rapidly defeating targets while you're amplified creates an orb of power. We also have aspects that just give you benefits when amplified. For instance, Flow State for hunters states that while you're amplified, your dodge recharges more quickly and you're more resilient while dodging, and your reload speed is greatly increased. Doesn't really matter all that much here on the reload side of things, considering this weapon literally auto reloads itself. For Warlocks, you have Arc Souls, where while amplifying, your Arc Souls are supercharged and gain increased fire rates. Now, don't get me wrong, I love getaway artists. You can convert your Arc Grenade into an Arc Soul to then become amplified, and that Arc Soul is then proccing within that aspect, supercharging that Arc Soul and firing even faster. But in this case, you could slot that exotic out for something else. Perhaps Fallen Sunstar, or the most recent rework here, to Geomax. For Titans, with Juggernauts, while you're amplified, that Juggernaut shield will block significantly more damage before breaking. You also have exotics like Point Contact Cannon Brace, which got a rework last season, and it does a heck of a lot more damage. And when you're amplified, then lightning strikes from that melee is actually increased. So again, there are benefits for being amplified, and this is not something just specific to hunters and the new hunter exotic. Granted, the moth synergy there is amazing. Like, don't get me wrong, I like using Thorn and Osteostruga on other classes, but it just fits in so well with Necrotic Grips. Overall, Diris is a pretty solid weapon. Not incredibly meta in one way or another, but it's still a pretty good choice and is also really unique and fun to use. We literally just ran Crota's in the other day, and it made me lol watching the boomers up high rain down on us, knowing that we actually have this weapon to use back on them. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.